as an educator for more than 25 years, I've had the privilege to work with students across the years. And one thing that is common that I found in the schools that I worked in whichever school and whatever age our students are in, teaching is all about building strong relationships with our students and opening their minds and developing in them the skills to thrive in an increasingly complex world. Amongst the audience today, we have a majority of parents whose eldest child is in secondary schools, and about 20% each in the primary and in the post-secondary level. And one of the questions parents have posed in a registration form is how, as parents, we can manage the tension between supporting our children's passion, say to be a YouTuber, and what we perceive to be the reality of future work. So I hope through our discussion today, parents may find answers to questions about helping our children choose their future. Certainly from the video on Damien, we get the idea that the ability to learn is important to one's future. And learning does not just happen in school, but throughout life. And to do that, our children need to have a certain mindset and attitude to find and open doors to opportunities. So it is about exploration, experimentation, and being curious. Something that our guest, Ginette, is definitely familiar with. Being someone who is always up for trying new things and who sees the value in also moving sideways in one's career. So Ginette, tell us a little bit about this idea about moving laterally.
Just a little background by myself. When I was in LaSalle, I studied at LaSalle, I did my diploma. What I did was multimedia arts. So we did programming, we did a bit of graphic design and web design. But now, today, I'm the program leader of the Diploma in Fashion. But you know, I've taken kind of the framework of what design is about and moved sideways. And you know, this is what we're trying to teach our students at LaSalle as well, that you can move sideways in the industry with these transferable skills, and that you have to recognize that you may not get the job that you want in the industry, or you may not be interested in the industry that you're studying for, and it's okay, you know. So yeah, I think, you know, it's important to try different things, to allow your children that time to try different things. Sometimes I feel like, you know, if they're always in tuition, they don't get that time to experiment. And that's very important in design. If you don't experiment and immediately you go and do that finished outcome, you know, you don't explore and don't open yourself up to different possibilities and innovations. And I think that applies to your life as well.
I don't know whether, Ginette, you could share with us, you know, the set of core skills that you see that are important to develop in your students that allow them to move sideways from one industry to maybe the next?
I think it's curiosity, resilience. You know, don't give up after you encounter some small little problem, and strength, and also a pride in your work. I think it's not ego, that's different, but a pride in your work, you know, a kind of pride. So, you know, giving the students space to explore, giving them the support, and asking them right questions, and showing them examples of how other people have achieved similar things, you know. So we bring in a lot of industry partners and speakers, and even people who just started local labels, fashion labels, and how they've done it through unconventional means.
So one of the things that we're trying to develop in our kids is all about teamwork, and collaboration is one of the important 21st century skills. And I do know that you have certain convictions about teamwork, and students invariably complain about project work, teamwork, and all that. So I need you to convince the audience today that collaboration and teamwork is very important. How do you do that?
Yeah, you know, I think if you start from the beginning, you allow your child to play with others, and allow your child to play with others well. You know, try not to step in. I know it's very difficult. Even for me, I'm a mother of a 3-year-old. When an older kid comes and shoves my daughter at the playground, I'm like, hey, you, cut it out, you know. But when a child around her age does that, you know, I try to let her kind of work out the issue, because if I feel like if I step in too much, she won't find that voice for herself. But also, you know, like you said, a lot of students hate teamwork, you know, it's the worst. And at LaSalle, we always do module surveys, and components and modules with collaborations always get the worst points, especially if they have to work together to produce outcomes together. If they work together and produce different outcomes, then they're like, oh yeah, okay, we meet a bit, and then, oh yeah, I learned a little from you, and then perhaps ignore you, and then do my own thing. They are happy with that. But if they have to produce outcomes together, make the effort to listen to each other, we get very, very low ratings for that. But invariably, they have to realize that there is almost no work that is siloed. You know, there is nothing that you are going to go out to work with where you are alone in a tower at the top. So yeah, I think it's very, very important, especially in fashion. It is a system. And in this system, there are all these little orbits that you have to kind of connect with each other. So it's perhaps the most important, and if you can, from the beginning, at the onset, already allow your child to kind of hang out with other people and mix, you know, and create things. Even if they're going out to be part of a band, like I did. You know, when I was a teenager, I was asked to be part of a band, and I was like, okay, you know, because I don't know how to play any instruments, but my friends taught me. But you know, it allowed me also to hang out with people of other races and other. I don't know, how do you call it? Black backgrounds, yeah, you know. So that helped me a lot in empathizing. And that is a transferable skill that's very, very important, because design is about empathy. You don't design for yourself. You design for other people. So, you know, in allowing your child to do many different things, hanging out with different types of people, you have skills that are kind of indirectly related to these activities that will help your child.
So we hear a lot about allowing your child to experiment, to learn from one another, from interactions with others, and importance of teamwork. Yeah. So maybe I'll move on to Imran, because your story is quite remarkable as well. I understand in your resume, you listed at least 12 jobs over 19 years. And you are now doing marketing consultancy for brands. That probably has surprised a lot of us today. Tell us about your journey of reinvention.
Okay, so I'm a serial job hopper. I've had, needless to say, 12 jobs in the past 19 years, over 4 industries, over multiple type of roles. But I think, okay, I've never really worked because I wanted to earn a lot. Yeah, that sounds like a nonsensical thing to say, but I really just wanted to be a writer at the start, right? I wanted to write for TV, that's it. And when I graduated, it was the recession. There were no jobs, and there was only one place where you can be a writer for television, which is MediaCorp. And back in the day, it was the Television Corporation of Singapore. So when I graduated, I had no money, I had no job, and I wanted to write for TV. So I did what any person would do to get that job. I offered my services for free. I said to the producer, let me produce a segment for you, and if you let me, and hopefully you can hire me, if it's of any quality whatsoever. So thankfully, I pulled something out of my hat, and they hired me. And since then, I've always been driven by the need to be better at what I want to be, which is a writer. And somehow the journey took me in all sorts of places. I became a scriptwriter for Phua Chu Kang. I became a producer. I ended up hosting my own TV show for a year. I ended up being a writer again because I got retrenched in my early 20s. I had to restart again. I had to become, well, I had no choice but to start writing again. I wrote for magazines when magazines still had cachet. And I just kept on going. And somehow or other, the journey led me to all sorts of places. I started working in Malaysia for a while as a lifestyle editor for a newspaper. I ended up working in Hong Kong. I came back to Singapore. I restarted again in marketing. I'm new to marketing. I've only done it for 8 years. It's a new industry for me. But I wouldn't be able to do what I do now if I hadn't gone through the journey as a writer, as a producer, and so on and so forth. So it was all very accumulative. And I think I have enough skill sets to be able to kind of pull off a lot of things in various industries, inevitably. And I think if you can, that would be the best journey for everyone, or anyone to be able to experience all these things. Mostly unexpected, mostly scary. I've been in very questionable situations where I'm in an abandoned barracks with a bunch of fighters fighting in an illegal fight in Indonesia, in Bandung, and I was staying with them to write a story about fighting. And it's great because you learn, you connect with people, and I'm a big fan of just connecting with people and understanding where they are. Maybe because I'm a writer, I need to empathize, I need to be able to express what they feel and what they're going through. And in turn, I get to be a better person because I get to see what they're going through. I get to understand. So yes, it's been, it's been a journey. I don't think it's going to stop anytime soon. Whatever interests me, or whatever I think will be a next good, exciting potential job, I'll grab it. And it's to my benefit, I think.
You do have a very open mind, and you don't close off possibilities for yourself. But can I just drill down a little bit about what is it about these industries, or what is it about your set of skills that allow you to move from one industry to the next? Because that would be something that our parents will be interested to know.
I think adapting to various industries is highly dependent on being as open as possible. You cannot have a closed mind and enter a functional position or a new industry and try to thrive. It's with an open mind that you are able to absorb and be able to actually adapt and learn. And learning is a tricky thing, right? Depending on how steep the learning curve is, it will be exceedingly difficult if it's a new industry or a new role. But I believe, like what Ginette said, a lot of it has to do with resilience as well. And resilience is something that you need to nurture. And I think one of the reasons why I was kind of raised open-minded, because my parents kind of let me experiment and do stuff. They kind of just said, do what makes you happy. And that's one thing that I'm really thankful for, that they said, you know, just do what you want and just be happy. Their main prime directive for me as a growing up, as a teenager, which I'm still surprised even now, is that they kind of loosen the reins a little bit when it comes to sports and activities. When I wanted to read, or when I went through my intense reading phase, they just plied me with books whenever they could. When I went through my rebellious skating years, which I'm still skating now at 44 with my son and daughter, they just let me rip, you know. I mean, I got into a lot of trouble, you know, when skating back in the day was pretty rough. You get chased by cops and so on and so forth, but you know, you find your way. You try and make through. You become resilient, you fall, you get up, you get beat up, you get up. Whatever happens, just get up and just keep going. And a lot of it is also driven by a sense of, I wouldn't say motivation, because motivation comes and goes, right? For me, it was more of discipline. I'm the type of person who's very mission-oriented. If I want something, I'll just get it. And I subscribe by the whole idea that it's not who's going to let me, it's who's going to stop me. So that's how I've been kind of just pushing along when it comes to doing things. Because you benefit, you learn. If I throw you out there, either you drown or you swim. Most likely, with the right kind of nurturing attitude, you'll swim.
Well, they talk a lot about soft skills, right? About bouncing back. And I think we can see where you are now today is a lot to do with how you were brought up as a child. Fall down, pick yourself up, and try new things. So, I mean, one thing at the back of most parents' mind is that when you move industry, was the technical competence an issue for you?
Oh, yes. Barely 6 years ago, I knew absolutely nothing about ecosystemic network distribution, which to me sounds like gibberish, right? But there was a problem. In my organization, we were unable to track every single applicant for jobs because I was in recruitment. And we wanted to find a way, or we had to find a way to link every single channel of CV acceptance into one main data repository. And I had to learn from scratch how to build an ecosystem, from the data center building, right down to distribution channels, to sponsorship, to push ads. You start from scratch. It's tough, right? And you don't suddenly overnight learn, aha, I now know network distribution. No, it's not. It's a long, slow, difficult process. But the thing is, what's the most important thing in being able to push through and being resilient is to understand that through the ups and downs of trying to learn something new, the end result is always fantastic. Whether you fail or whether you succeed, you've definitely learned something. And here's one thing that I think that I have to stress. It is very, very important to fail. You have to fail. If you don't fail, you haven't learned anything. You have to fall down. You can't just keep on walking straight. There's no such thing. The more times you fail, the better it is, because you become more and more resilient. If I had been retrenched, I was retrenched at 25. And if I said, you know what, I'm done. I don't want to be a writer anymore. I would have stopped at my third, fourth job, stayed in one industry, and be exactly what I was probably like 10 years ago, or 12 years ago. But no, you get up, you push ahead, you find something, you learn it, just try to excel in it. You'd be surprised.
Oh, thank you so much for sharing with us about this aspect of picking ourselves up and get moving. So this aspect of grit is, I think, an important attribute for our students. We hear from Ginette and Imran about the importance of experimentation, exploring, moving from one sideways, from one industry to the next. David, on the other hand, is somebody who knew from an early age that he wanted to be in technology. And then he became an investment banker dealing with technology companies, and even have worked with a lot of startups. So I want to ask David, share with us the kind of attitudes and mentality you have found to be most useful or crucial to succeed in these kind of companies.
Okay, so I'll give you a bit of my background. I studied in the US, so I was sent on a scholarship to study engineering, but over a few beers with my American friends, they told me that you're actually in a top Ivy League school, so you really should explore what's going on in the liberal arts college. So I was enrolled in a College of Engineering, but actually graduated with a Bachelor of Arts and a Bachelor of Science in Engineering. So the Bachelor of Arts was more accidental, because what happened was I took so many different courses in sociology, political science, history, economics, anthropology, philosophy, history, that my advisor in the engineering college told me that I had enough credits to graduate with a BA, which I didn't plan for. So I think it was more driven by curiosity, because I never liked history when I was in secondary school in Singapore, and I thought Southeast Asian history was damn super boring. But when I took history of Southeast Asia in the US, we looked at primary research. That means we were looking at archives that were written by traders who had come through Southeast Asia, and these archives are stored in the library. And we were doing primary research off of that. And that was one of the most fascinating things you learn, because you start to fall in love with history, because history is prone to reinterpretation. So if you read a history book by author A, author B, author C, they may have different representations or interpretations of what happened historically. But being able to access the original manuscripts of the traders, which were archived in the library, we were able to look at first-hand information of events that happened in Southeast Asia when some of these English traders came through, discovered, all the ancient empires in Thailand and Malaysia and all that stuff. So with that kind of background, I was bonded as an engineer. I came back. I worked as an engineer for 2 years. Then I broke my bond, and I went into finance. So when I went into finance, the HR of my engineering company basically questioned my wisdom in switching over to finance, because he said, you have no MBA, you have no ACCA, you have no CPA, you have no finance accounting background, and that doesn't make you a suitable candidate to go into finance. But I had studied and prepped all this before in my private time to make the shift over into finance. So I did my own personal studies for about a year, and then I was happily given a job opportunity in a finance, in a bank. So I was able to move from engineering into finance, and after 20 years in finance, I decided to come to NTU because I had viewed that finance was, a large chunk of it was going to get automated away with robotics and artificial intelligence. Thinking as an engineer, a lot of it could be automated. So the reason why I went into NTU was because I was interested back in my original training was an engineer. I think that in the next 10, 20, 30 years, there's going to be a lot of exciting opportunities in tech, okay, science and technology. But that doesn't mean that if you're a student who doesn't like science and technology, there's no future for you. Because when I do a bit of angel investing on my side, and since year 2000, I've invested across a number of different companies. And when we look at startups, in building a startup, you really need a team with multidisciplinary skills. Okay, so when you work for American bosses, one of the things they teach you is that they never like to hire people from their own backgrounds. That means if I'm trained as a Harvard MBA in investment banking, that my boss would not want to hire another MBA from Harvard. Okay, he wants to hire a philosophy major. He wants to hire somebody who can think out of the box, because the world we live in going forward in the next future is increasingly complex. So the skill sets that we look for when we build a startup are the ability to solve complex problems, okay? When you solve complex problems, you can't approach it from one side. You need to be able to look at the problem from multiple angles. And in order to do that, you hire people, or you build a team with of people with different skill sets, okay? It is wrong to build a company with team members of homogeneous skill sets, okay? So I think the challenge in the Singapore context, now if this was in Silicon Valley, no problem, okay? I think the challenge with Singapore sometimes is that employers have a very myopic or narrow view of employees. Oh, if I don't see that you have a technical background, I don't want to hire you as an engineer. Or if you don't have a marketing background, you don't get to do sales and marketing. But I think there have been numerous studies done by academic institutions, including MIT, showing that they basically had this open contest, okay, where they threw out a challenge globally to anybody who could solve the problem via computer software program. And the top winners who had won the prize actually were computer programs who didn't have a degree in computer programming, okay? They were guys who had studied computer programming on their own in the Eastern European or African countries, but they self-learned, okay? And these guys beat the top guys from the top universities in the US when they solved the problems. So it doesn't mean that just because you're trained as an economist, you have to practice the art of economics, okay? And I think one of the skill sets, or one of the things that as parents, the most important skill set or habit that you should impart to your children from young is the habit of reading, okay? So when I was young, my parents always took me to the library and the bookstore and forced me to buy a book. You know, every 2 weeks, you had to buy a new book. You had to tell your parents what you learned from the book. And I think that reading skill improves your knowledge, all-roundedness. So that will carry on in life. And that's very important for a person who is well-read to be able to switch and move careers, okay? Switch into a different career. Because if you don't have knowledge, you fear. If you have knowledge, a little bit of knowledge is dangerous. With a little bit of knowledge, you can build on that knowledge on your own and switch or move careers. So that's kind of the advice I would give.
Okay, I've learned that one of the important skills to have is to be curious and to read as widely as possible and to stay open to learning all these opportunities that you built for yourselves. I think now we need to move on to open up the dialogue so that we can address some of the parents' questions. And if I can just invite some of you, after hearing from the panelists, the type of questions that you still have, or you would like to respond to some of the comments that they have made, please feel free to use the microphones on the aisle. If not, I'm also going to look at the questions that we have posed in the system. All right? Anyone would like to come up to the mic? Okay, I'm looking at this question. Which career will be more important and unlikely to be replaced by robots or artificial intelligence in the future? Perhaps David would like to take a stab at this.
Okay, so our education system, and you know, I was a bit of a, okay, so my dad was a diplomat. Okay, so we moved around a lot. So primary 1 to primary 6, I was in an American school overseas in Tokyo and Taipei. And then I came back to secondary school in Singapore, UK education system, and I went to the US to study. So our system emphasizes, or historically has emphasized, a lot of logic and mathematical skills. While those skill sets are important, those are exactly the things that can be automated away, unfortunately, okay? Anything that can be done on an Excel spreadsheet, the computer will do it better than you. The computer has no downtime. It's 24/7. That's why they fly drones now, you know, because the computer doesn't need to sleep. The computer doesn't need to eat. They don't need to go on holiday. They don't need to take care of children, you know. So ironically, the skills that you need, teamwork, okay? The more human skills, okay? Teamwork, curiosity, EQ, leadership skills, okay? And those are ironically the skill sets that cannot be automated away, because at the end of the day, human beings are not going to be managed by a bunch of robots. If your child is very good at selling koyok, he can sell anything to his classmates, that is an extremely good skill set to have, okay? Because you can't get robots to sell a service or product to another human being. At the end of the day, the sales job has to be done by human to human. The other interesting thing I've had this conversation with another parent is, this parent asked me, hey, my son is more on the autistic side, so what do I do? So I told her basically that actually autists, surprisingly, might have a very good place in the future, because these are things that as human beings we appreciate, okay? You cannot get a robot to replace an artist, right? So ironically, it is what makes us human beings, our ability to converse, to talk to each other, to sell things to each other, to lead another team member, to understand from an emotional standpoint, EQ, how another person thinks or feels or behaves. Those are the skill sets that cannot be replaced by a machine.
I'm sure Ginette feel very reassured as well, because empathy and creativity are things that only human beings can possess.
I'm going to start a new program about team building and be the lecturer for it, so that I won't be out of a job. Yeah, no, exactly that, you know. So I think it's important to be a good communicator, you know. I mean, we communicate, we're not sending a message just purely out of just words that are randomly put together, but it's the communication at a human level which is very priceless, and it's not, like he said, you know, it's not easily replicated by a robot. So I think that is, and I always tell my students, you are a designer and you are a communicator. You are more than a person who makes something look pretty. You have to empathize, you have to understand the end user, who's the target audience, what does this target audience read, listen, watch, and etc. So these are not things that are easily going to be replicated by robots.
All right. Imran, you would like to fill in?
I want to echo what David said, because 2 years ago, in the industry that I was in then, which was recruitment, they were looking towards AI and or artificial intelligence to do some of the work that was extremely heavy on the FTE headcount, which is the manpower itself, which was the recruitment process of actually doing interviews. So, so we had a feeling that it could potentially be automated and that robots or a software can do the interview process for candidates, because we have hundreds or thousands of candidates that we have to filter through after we look at their CVs, right? And we thought, let's try this new software that could just, filter that further to the kind of candidates that we really wanted. But one thing really stood out during the experiment is that you cannot take away the human touch, really. As a consultant who talks to someone to find out what are your career aspirations, what do you want to do, you can then help by giving them suggestions of what their career would look like in the next 5, 10 years, and the skill sets they need, and so on and so forth. A robot could do that as well. But a robot cannot inspire or to motivate someone at all. Not even with a lovely voice, robot voice, not even if it's like a 3D rendering of a beautiful person on screen. No. The human interaction part, although they've managed to get it really close, our Japan office had a human lifelike robot actually doing the interview. But it still kind of didn't work, because that same person, after that experience, will not say, I want to talk to that robot again. The person, if was interviewed by another person and had a connection, will always go back to the consultant and say, I want to talk to this particular consultant again, because there was empathy and it gave a very, or he or she gave a very human conversation and feeling. Like what the old adage says, it's not what you say, it's not what you do, it's how you make a person feel. And a robot cannot make you feel anything.
Okay, I think the next question is also a very relevant one, and for which the panelists will have a lot to say. Now, this question is, for kids who are not academic, how can they fit into mainstream education without losing confidence?
I have a lot to say about this. I'm not very, when I was in my primary school and secondary school, I wasn't very academically inclined. So I was like, O levels, do I really need to know how to write a Chinese essay? No. So I was like, okay, I'm going to fail this, because I did have a plan in mind. I had many friends who were studying in NAFA, which is an art college, and they were very, very cool. And I wanted to do what they did. So at that time, the schools provided alternate entryways for students who didn't have a full set of O-level credits. And I managed to get into LASALLE, which was cooler, of course, because now I teach at LASALLE. But anyways, so I managed to get into LASALLE, and then I failed my foundation course because I was too playful. But I met many different people, and many of these people now who I gone partying with, hung out at Burger King for many hours with, are now art directors or President Design Award winners. And, so I think, taking the chance and thinking that, I can take this risk and I think I will be okay, turned out really fine for me. I can't say that it's going to be the same for everyone, but at the end of my diploma course, I went to take a multimedia arts diploma. I did find an interest in design, and I carried that through my different reincarnations. So I've been in a punk band, and in that punk band, I've met all these punk kids who are making zines. So zines are self-published magazines. I took my design skills to print out my own zine, And we also had to market our own demo tape. In the past, we used to call them demo tapes. So we record our own EP and put them on tapes, and then design the sleeves, and then go out and market. Last time in the 90s, no internet. So word of mouth, make friends and sell stuff, make our own stickers and silk screen T-shirts. And then I took that kind of DIY ethos to start my own fashion label later. I'm not trained in fashion, but there's always this, if other people can do it, I don't think it's that difficult. But again, you do take a little longer, but you have a different perspective on things. Like my fashion label was a little different from the fashion labels that were in Singapore at that time. So, we started a store online, and we didn't have money to hire models. We model ourselves. Photoshop a lot, but, yeah. But we take that kind of daring do, so to speak, to do things. So as a person who didn't really do very well in school, I think I'm doing okay. And also, because I made friends with so many people, I suddenly became a DJ as well, because somebody said, hey, I have this night, can you come and be DJ? I don't know how to DJ. Just like in my punk band, I don't know how to play the bass. Never mind, just press here. I was like, okay, just do it. And then now I'm a DJ. I was like, I do earn some money at the side, besides being a lecturer. So if you open yourself up to experiences and to making friends of different kinds of backgrounds, and it's very interesting to meet people. And when they tell you, hey, you want to do this, my first instinct is always, but then, oh well, okay, just do it. So I think if you have maybe a mindless kind of lack of fear of something, it can help you if you're not so academically inclined. But now I have my MA. I have a master's in design. And I realized through my many years of doing these various things is that I'm a maker. I make and then I learn. So I took a master's where I made and learned and wrote a thesis. So it's, I think it's recognizing in a child what kind of person, how your child learns, making or learning through books first. And these two different ways are, they coexist side by side, and we have to recognize that.
Thank you. Imran?
I'm not academically inclined either. I kind of peaked very early at 12. I did really well at PSLE, so I went to really good school. And it was in that boys' school that I discovered girls, so academics all went down the drain. That didn't turn out really well. So I went from a really good school and in an environment that was filled with a very distinct kind of student. They were most of them were well-to-do. I came from a very average income, sort of a middle income background. My dad was a technician, my mom was a teacher. And I did well in PSLE because I was in the same school as my mother. So maybe that's the reason why, I don't know, under constant supervision. But of course, without that supervision, all went to hell. And so after secondary school, from a grade school, I went to a pre-U. And in the pre-U, it was very different, right? It was the first time in my school career that I realized, oh my God, I have classmates who had to run out of school after class to quickly start work because they had parents, single parents, and brothers and sisters that they had to help support. And it had a huge impact on me because it was such a different universe from my previous school, where one of the problems one of my classmates had was he had too much money in his wallet and he couldn't bend it. And it's like, what kind of problem is that? And the other problem he had was he never had small change to buy food at the canteen. He always had $50 notes, and the auntie hated him for it. It's like, you boy, again. And I'm like, you, how can you? What is this? And then to the other side, where I had classmates who didn't have money, who skipped recess because they were saving it for their parents. It was mind-boggling. It was heart-wrenching. And I realized that for me, in pre-U, I did terribly as well. I was really, really terrible. I lost interest in studies. I was a terrible teenager. I don't know how my parents put up my nonsense. But, I was obsessed with skating then. And that's all I did. I just went out and skated. I skated, and I met lots of different kinds of people. And one thing I'm good at is like, I know how to negotiate and deal with people of all sorts of backgrounds. That's one thing I'm really proud of. I rediscovered the joy in studying when I had to take a loan to go to uni in Australia, right? Because, of course, no money, take a loan so I can pay back later, right? And it was in Australia that I rediscovered it. And I rediscovered it because of one teacher. And she was an amazing, inspiring woman who showed me that you just have to find your purpose, and you just have to find something that you're really interested in. And for me, I was obsessed with television. I've always been a TV addict. I still am. Unfortunately, my children are becoming addicts as well. I'm sorry to my wife. But you know, hey, I didn't turn out too bad, huh? So anyway, so she helped me discover that I really wanted to write for TV. You know, and plus I was a bit of a rebel. I wanted to write TV shows that made fun of large institutions like governments and organizations. And that's why I wanted my way in, right? So that's why I offered my free labor at the first 2 months. But that was my aim. I had a purpose. I wanted to make a statement, and I wanted to get in, even though my grades were crap, so I had to work. And I worked hard because I had a purpose, I had a vision. Get into the semi-government institution and make a statement. So that was the purpose. So I'm not academically inclined. Maybe when I was 12, under supervision of my mother, but not anymore. I had to find purpose to be driven forward. Not even motivated, just driven forward because I wanted to make a statement. And that's why I think that, like what Ginette says, you need to find your thing. You let your children find their thing. Not everyone can be an academic, no way. In that kind of situation, that kind of utopia, then everyone's useless, right? Because you all have the same paper qualifications. It's the diversity that matters. Especially when now I'm running a mentorship program and I see a lot of young NTU, NUS, SMU, SUSS, MIT people applying to become apprentices. I really tell them, don't show me a single shred of your qualifications. I don't give a shit. I don't care. Okay? I want to put you on a different test, and I test their resilience. Because I will drill them to make them better marketers. So again, it's about finding your style, it's about finding what drives you, it's finding your thing, really. Finding your rhythm in life, finding what really makes you happy that you do. I'm happiest when I'm writing very subversive content for TV. That's what I do. There's a TV show coming up soon called On Toggle, I'll tell you later.
So to the parents who have this question, you know, what you hear is very reassuring that maybe now the children are discovering what they are interested in. It doesn't matter because once they find out what drives them, something that gives them purpose, they will put their 100% in it and succeed in whatever they want. Okay, and schools are doing a lot in terms of allowing them to discover their interests and giving them the opportunities to do so. Well, David, in contrast, you are somebody who did brilliantly in school. So I don't know whether you have any advice to give.
Okay, so as an angel investor, we invest into startups. Okay, so we're at NTU, we build startups. I've also been investing since year 2000, and I think one of the interesting things about investing in the startups is that in none of my investee companies have I ever asked the founders what their academic qualifications were, okay? So yes, I may be academically qualified, but when I invest into businesses or I invest into startups, that is not a criteria for me to invest in. I look at founders who tell me, I see a problem here, I'm very passionate about solving the problem, I have a team here that I built to solve the problem, and I have a strategy to get to where we want to go. And hopefully this will be the exit. So as investors, even in public equities, into startups and all that stuff, we never ever ask what is the academic. In fact, one of my businessman friends who is on my syndicate of investors, we were having a joke one day. He said Singapore education system sometimes a bit too narrow. So I asked him, so what is your criteria for investing into some of your startups? And he says, oh, I look for candidates or founders who have a BTC qualification. I say, what is BTC? He said, Botak Te. Okay? So, I mean, I'm serious. It doesn't, it really depends on what type of job you want your kid or your child to have when he grows up. If you want him to be a civil servant, yes, the academic qualifications matter, okay, unfortunately. But if you work in a multinational company, or if you, you know, for instance, at the bank, when I worked at the investment bank, we had a very well-qualified candidate from a top American Ivy League school. We gave that individual a job, but unfortunately, that individual couldn't last 1 year. Okay, so at the end of 1 year, we really had to let that person go because that individual just did not understand the nature of the work we were doing. So just on paper, it looked really nice, the qualifications, it looked like the perfect score, you know. But when it came down to doing the job, that person was woefully short in terms of being able to deliver. So I would say that academic qualifications matter only at the very early stage of your career, when you're getting your first job. After that, it's a toss-up between luck and the people you meet, okay? So between luck and brains, I choose luck if I wanted to be successful in life, okay? So any businessman will tell you that. I'm not saying I'm not saying academic grades are not important, but to measure a person's intelligence just based on that piece of paper you got, you know, 40 years ago or 30 years ago is not an adequate measure of the person's intelligence or capacity to do his or her job. Okay?
Okay, maybe we have one or two more questions. There's this
please.
question. Oh, yes. All right,
Yeah.
yes.
I think the panel is an interesting panel, but I'm here because of 2 kids. I'm more curious to ask the panel, do you see if you were to graduate or finish your studies in 20 years' time, would you have the same opportunity as what you pursued?
So in about 20 years' time,
Yes.
the opportunities that were presented to the 3 panelists, will they still exist in that 20 years time frame, right?
That's right.
Yeah.
Because today, where you see is that, to Imran's point about recruitment, right? So there's technology and software today that filters off resumes or CVs that doesn't have certain qualification or certain skill sets. So without having this foundation or without having this competence, you're not even shortlisted to have a discussion with any of the companies. And many companies out there use that kind of platform. PS, when you are still graduated or you're just graduated, this technology doesn't exist. And into the future with AI and all the other stuff, you'll make it harder to get into the doorsteps of the big banks and whatnot. Is that true or not true? Then how do you actually groom the current generation or the kids today to get ready for the world of tomorrow? That would be an interesting point I'd like to find out.
Hey, thank you for your question. I see my panelists are all ready to respond.
Okay, since the word recruitment appeared and I've been in there, I'll go first. Okay, so 20 years down the road, nobody knows what the hell's going to happen, first and foremost, all right? So you can prepare all you want, and like what David said, luck may play with or against you, and you may end up doing something completely different altogether, okay? So it's best not to try and see too far in the future, because you can't. So the best you can do right now is to really find your thing, your rhythm, your passion, your purpose, because this will inevitably lead you to something that you're passionate about and that will drive you. Now again, yes, a lot of technologies are happening and technology will never stop. It will continue going. The thing is, don't sit back and wait for things to happen for you or for your children. You need to make them happen yourself, all right? If I had just decided not to do anything after being retrenched, I mean, I'd be in a very different situation, but instead I chose to pursue and make things happen. I knocked on doors. I did all kinds of ridiculous things. I offered work for free. I wanted to make sure I get a foot in at every point in time. The thing about luck is that you can sometimes sort of manipulate it by creating opportunities for yourself. Be completely shameless when it comes to your own success. Be shameless when it comes to making things happen for yourself, because no one else is going to do it for you. And this is something you need to teach your children where possible to make opportunities for themselves. 20 years down the road, yes, even now, in fact, all of you, if you're on LinkedIn, and I work a lot with LinkedIn on how to filter CVs and how to find the right candidates, they are already doing it, okay? And it's highly likely that on LinkedIn, if you think you are going to meet the ultimate corporation MNC to interview you, no, it's not going to happen, okay? It's just a platform. LinkedIn is just a tool. And all these CV scopings, it's all just luck. It's all just a numbers game. So what can you do to influence that numbers game? You have to appear in front of a person to be able to find those opportunities. Every single 12 of my opportunities, okay, not every single one. One was because of a recruiter who found me. The rest was because of people I knew and people I've met in my history, people who know me, people who know what I can do, who will vouch for me and tell me he's the right man for the job. Not some computer, not some filtration software system, no. Someone will reference me as the person for the job. It's always happened. It's happened for the past 19 years. And you know what? It's going to happen again and again. You have to be in front of people. You have to make the opportunities. Networking events, go. Meet MNC bosses, corporations, go. Even if it's just a normal get-together social event, go. Diversity is key. Don't just stick to the same social or career circles. Meet everyone. And everyone will be able to vouch for you if you have the right skill sets, if you have the right mindset in how to improve yourself and what you bring to the table. That is the best way you're going to get ahead in this world where it's mostly ass luck. I mean, how else are you going to manipulate that, right?
David, would you like to add?
So, as an angel investor, we invest into businesses which will be here in the next 10 years, because the average exit period is 10 years for a startup. So these businesses are going to be around in 10 years to 20 years. So in fact, when I invest into businesses, I have to think like, what are the types of businesses that are going to be needed by consumers or businesses 5 to 10 years from now? But to your point about not knowing, so we have this, I think this wrong, shall we say, idea that a university education, once completed at the age of 21 or 25, is going to be the be-all and end-all, and that will set you for life for the next 40, 50 years. So I think that notion has to be banished. Our children have to think about continuous, lifelong learning. They will have to reinvent themselves. They will have to pick up new skills. The idea of staying in one job or one career for your life, the other challenge is that, okay, so juxtaposed against this is that we as human beings are living longer. So the average life expectancy now for a Singaporean male is maybe about 83 years old. Okay, so if you think about it, in my parents' generation, my dad retired at 55. So if you graduated at 25 and you retired at 55, you had 30 years of working experience. Today, the retirement age is 65. Tomorrow, or maybe 10 years from now, it could be 75, just because we are living longer and healthier lives. And the cures for a lot of diseases that you see today, they may be found. Cancer, Alzheimer's, all these things may be found. So we as human beings are going to live longer. So the idea that you think that what you learn at the age of 25 is going to be sufficient for you to work 40 years, 50 years, or 60 years, I think that's a gross miscalculation of your brain power, because artificial intelligence doubles every 18 months. So we as a workforce, I think universities, their role eventually will change. even for myself, where I think I'm at the vanguard of technological change and all that, I'm still going on to Coursera and taking courses to understand things about disease, things about robotics, things about programming, blah, blah, blah. So, so what do you do to your child in order to inculcate that idea, that notion of lifelong learning? You have to get him to develop healthy reading habits from young, okay? Because it is only from healthy reading habits, that constant yearning to learn from reading, that you develop the skill sets or the idea that one has to continuously upgrade or read or expand your knowledge base for the rest of your life, okay? So that would be my reply to the individual.
Okay. Do we have time for one more question? Yes. Oh, time's up. Oh. Wrong one. Okay, 10 minutes more. All right. I'm going to look at this question, which is, my son has a fixed mindset to the things he likes. How can I encourage him to be more open to trying new things? So first of all, is it wrong to have a fixed mindset about things you like? And should parents then try to open up the minds of the kids to other possibilities?
What's the context? Is it a very young child, very much old? I mean, depends, right? If it's a
Depends.
yeah 3-year-old child obsessed with cars, carry on.
Oh.
Or teenager obsessed with even okay. So from that perspective, we don't have context here. My stance on this is that to let them try everything, right? Try as much as we can possibly afford them to try. If you live next to a sports complex, you can get this all these sporting activities really, really cheap. So my kids get to go swimming, archery, and all that right next door for really cheap. And we just let them try. It's only $5. And if they like it, they pick it up, great. If they're obsessed about something, you know, it shows that they are driven to that particular activity, which I think encouraging. I would be very worried if my child had absolutely no passion. I'd be extremely worried. I mean, as long as it's not completely destructive or it's not something which is illegal, I think if a child is very happy doing something, I think carry on.
Yeah, so we're getting a peep into this panelists. What is their philosophy about bringing up your children, right? Is helping to open up the minds a very important thing that you do for your children, and how do you go about doing that?
Yeah, I think it's important to constantly reason with your child. When he or she wants to do something, and if you say no, explain. So explain everything. Speak to your child a lot. My child speaks a lot because my mother-in-law used to speak so much to her when she was just a wee baby. Oh, I'm taking out my bag. I'm putting things inside. Blah blah blah. So she could speak very early on, and from that time on, we would bring her to museums. She doesn't like loud music, so she heard my music. She didn't like it. Very sad. I'm like, why? It's good. But you go to museums, and I try not to bring her to the zoo as much as possible. But when I do, I will say, oh, yeah, this animal doesn't look too healthy, blah, blah, blah. But explain and expose as much as possible to different types of books, to different types of people, and not to tell the child to, no, keep quiet. If the child has a question, answer it. So you open up the child to asking questions and to creating this environment where asking questions is fine, that is not out of line to ask a question. So I think creating that environment is kind of building a foundation for the future, where she or he is in a learning environment, that asking questions is not something to be ashamed about or shy about. Because when I'm in school and I ask students, hey, okay, there's this piece of work here your friend did. Can you ask questions or say something about it? Yeah, very nice. Like, what is nice? What do you mean by nice? The colors are good. So already I can see that a lot of our kids are like that because perhaps they don't feel comfortable asking questions. So I think asking questions are very annoying. I know, because it's like especially my child, but it's a good thing.
I think the one of the most important skills which I hope to impart to my children is actually effective communication. Because that is something which will follow you through life. So one of the things that my wife and I have done is to try to build as extensive a library as possible at home. I mean, yes, you can find books online and so on and so forth, but we really try to limit screen time where we can. And we love actual physical books. So, I mean, of course, both my wife and I have our own agenda in the things that we like and the reference books that we buy. So, I mean, I have quite an extensive section on Greek mythology, which I absolutely adore. And I hope to go into a discourse with my son or daughter about whether Zeus and Poseidon should reconcile in terms of their relationship, blah, blah, blah. But, you know, it's something which, you know, I'm looking forward to. I want to have that discourse with my children. I want them to argue. And I think arguing and asking questions is really important for any developing mind. When you don't do that, and when it's more shushing and you don't know what you're talking about, that's when you start to curtail, you box up the child's mind. We want them to ask questions. We want to be challenged, you know. There's no right, wrong parenting way, there's no perfect way, but at the very least, we know we'll be challenged. So might as well just embrace it all out. You have a question, bring it on, challenge accepted, I will answer whatever bloody question you have. Let's go. You know, so that's my approach.
David, what about yours?
I think as children go through different growth phases, right? So sometimes they develop a passion for certain thing, and it becomes almost an obsession, and you think like the kid's going off on the wrong track, you know. So, you know, when I was young, when my parents asked me what I wanted to be when I grew up, I said I wanted to be an airline pilot. To the horror of my parents, who thought airline pilots wasn't exactly a profession that they wanted to encourage, but it was just a phase, you know. So I would say kids go through different phases when they grow, and they develop obsessions. But to mitigate that scenario of wandering off the cliff, the only thing I can think of as a parent is to encourage the child to explore other areas as well. And again, it boils down to your general reading and your curiosity quotient, you know. So one has to encourage an attitude of reading widely, right? So that the child has all options to explore and not just his one plain obsession.
We talk a lot about reading and the importance of reading. So I have this question, you know. This question reads, my child hates reading, but would rather watch the YouTube. I think that is true of many children. So I think this will be relevant. And playing his computer games with his friends all day long. How can I get him to read when there are more addictive distractions?
So, I mean, you can encourage the child to watch on programs like YouTube, TED Talks, right, or Singularity University. These are not very complex discussions, but something that deals with the world, general knowledge about the world, the universe, nature, and all that stuff. It's still informational and knowledgeable, because sometimes for me, if I want to pick up something about digital marketing, right? I can either pick up a textbook, or I can go onto YouTube, or I can go onto Coursera, Udemy, right? So sometimes I pick up a lot of stuff from looking at YouTube, right? So there's no right or wrong answer. There are educational videos and content on YouTube and videos. You just, as a parent, have to encourage your child to look at sort of to understand where to search for content that potentially could be interesting from to prick his interest in that particular area, right? And I find that, you know, things like TED Talk is very interesting, because it talks a lot about very interesting things that people are discovering. It doesn't have to deal with science and technology. It could be dealing with nature. It could be dealing with habit. It could be dealing with human emotions and all that stuff. But it's interesting. So it just depends on the kind of content you want to encourage your child to watch.
I think, you know, like I said before, there are two types of people. One learn through books, the other learn through making. I'm the one who learns through making. most recent new career developments that I've become a weaver because I learned weaving online. I went to a small workshop and it was like very basic weaving, but now I can weave. And I showed my work at the National Gallery, you know, so, and a lot of it I learned online, watching YouTube videos. So if your child likes to play computer games and likes to watch YouTube videos, then show him a YouTube video on how to make his own computer game. Magic. You know, just find that drive, that thing, that area that this child excels in. You know, and I think we have to forget and let go of what preconceived notions of success in the Singapore context is. You know, is, oh, be a lawyer, be a this, but also these can be very boring. You know, and it's not for everybody. You know, if you, like David said, you know, if you have studied and graduated at 25 in a field and you've worked it all your life, it can be extremely boring. So, like, I'm sure you
I
can
get
tell.
bored very easily, very
That's
easily.
okay, you know, to change or to find that area that is not part of what you were studying before. And it could be something that you picked up online. Harness the power of technology in that way.
So the panelists have given us a very good idea about the kind of things we can do as parents and the kind of attitudes that we can build in them. So I hear things like actions. Our kids should get into different social networks, right? Our kids should, attitudes should keep an open mind to finding and opening doors of opportunities. And lastly, habits about gathering information, whether through reading or through tech talks, videos, and so on and so forth. So I really want to thank the audience for your questions and to the panelists for your time and for your insights. It has been very, very useful for all of us here this afternoon. So thank you, Ginette, Imran, and David again for your time.